Con and I would like to thank you for clicking on our video and our review of the Tracksmith Eliot Racer. And yeah, give a like for Con, subscribe, ding the bell for notifications, leave a comment below, and we'll keep on bringing you content. Good morning. Let's talk about some of the specs and features of the Tracksmith Eliot Racer. Now, normally I like to do the specs and features when I've just unboxed the shoe before I've taken it for any kind of run, but I have gone running in this shoe a couple of times while I was up in Massachusetts, in Boston and in Salem, both before the Boston Marathon and after the Boston Marathon. So I have a couple of runs in it. I'm gonna try not to let that impact the specs and features talk, and I'll include some of those details in the shoe talk afterwards. So this is the Eliot Racer. I did weigh it when I got back in town, and it was about 224 grams plus or minus for the left shoe right through. I think it might have been 223 and 225. That's about 7.9 ounces if you use imperial. And the materials are great. The upper is thinner than it looks. It's almost kind of translucent, but not too translucent. So this cream color really still shows through without really letting the socks show. There is a good amount of structure on the toe bumper here, but not a heavy amount of structure. It just kind of keeps things comfortable and off the toes. I do like the gold stripe, the Tracksmith stripe here. In fact, I'm going to take these for a race today, which is why I'm doing the whole believe in the run, outdoor walking down the street with the shoe thing. And that's why I chose the particular race kit that I chose today. Anyway, the laces are like coated with silicone so that they stay tied. They're a little bit stickier, sort of like On tried to do with the Cloudboom Strike. They did come untied during one run, but I think once you get them locked down, they're going to stay locked down. The faux suede on the heel counter is one of the most comfortable heel cups, one of the most comfortable collars that I've ever experienced. However, if you'll look, there's kind of a patina of color there on the inside of the collar, and that's from the first couple of runs. I'm not sure if that had to do with the fact that I was wearing some Injinji Spectrum socks that had some dye on them, or if it is a trait of the actual faux suede in the heel collar, but there's a little bit of color rub off on the inside of the collar there, which is unfortunate for a shoe that is this premium in quality and in appearance and in price. The heel counter has a good amount of structure for a racing shoe. It's not totally rigid. I can bend it if I want, but it's a lot of structure there. However, it is very comfortable. The tongue, also very comfortable, or I should say fully gusseted. And once you get your foot in there and really tug the tongue so it's kind of nice and flush against the foot, then it stays locked down nice and well. But I do take a little bit of time to get this shoe on and get the fit just right, because it is snug. And even the employee at the Tracksmith store said it was a snug fit. I don't mind that in a racing shoe because I still had plenty of room in the toes. It just stayed locked down. Locked down and supportive. That's going to be the story for this shoe. Also comfortable. As far as racing shoes go, which don't often prioritize comfort, this one is extremely comfortable. Maybe one of the most comfortable to walk around in, run around in racing shoes that I have. Going to the midsole, it is a 2-layer midsole, not counting the carbon plate in the middle. The bottom layer is PIBA, and it's one of the firmer tunings of PIBA that I would experience. But the top layer, which is removable, and when I have two hands, I'll show on a different video removing it. It takes a little bit more effort to remove this one than it does the On Cloudboom Strike. The top layer is aliphatic TPU, ATPU, which is a little bit bouncier, a little bit more forgiving. And there's this nice slim look to the midsole here, but the midsole is much thicker. If you look at where my finger is compressing, is much thicker than it looks like on the camera. So it really looks like a nice, sleek shoe, but it has all of the stats that you would expect from a racer. 38 millimeters of total cushion in the heel, 30.5 millimeters of total cushion in the forefoot. That's for a sample size. Makes for a 7.5 millimeter drop. The outsole good coverage on the outsole, all along the lateral side, which is important for my particular type of gait and foot strike, and in the high wear areas under the forefoot and under the heel. You can tell there's still a little bit of dirt from some of the runs that I did. Nice Tracksmith branding right there on the exposed PIBA. And the exposed PIBA, you can tell, is elevated. It's not flush against the ground, so it's not going to wear away or get sheared like a lot of exposed PIBA midsoles do. So I've run in this shoe a couple of times, very comfortable. I'm excited to race in it today. But what I'm gonna do for my warm-up is actually do the shoe off. I've got some shoes that I brought with me to do a shoe off, so we're gonna knock out all the features of this video slightly out of order, but in one day today. Looking forward to bringing it to you guys. All right, for this shoe off, we have the Tracksmith Eliot Racer, of course, and I'm going to be testing it against the Puma Deviate Nitro Elite 3, the Tier Valkyrie Elite Carbon, the Saucony Endorphin Elite 2, the Hoka Cielo X1 2.0, the Nike Alphafly 3, and the On Cloudboom Strike. All right, I've got the Puma Deviate Nitro Elite 3 and the Tracksmith Eliot Racer. I chose the Deviate Nitro Elite 3 because it's the only other super shoe I have that uses a TPU, the aliphatic TPU. And it uses it for the full midsole, the Eliot Racer for the top midsole. The Nitro Elite 3 is a lighter shoe, but I'm not so much feeling that on foot, at least not at this, well, a little bit harder than easy pace. I am going uphill right now. The Deviate Nitro Elite 3 is a little bit firmer. That's not a bad thing. I think the ATPU in the topsole of the Eliot Racer is a little bit softer tuned, which makes sense because supposedly that's an aftermarket thing that you could replace in the shoe once it gets worn out. The Eliot Racer might be more comfortable for longer distances, which is why I chose the cadre of shoes I did for this particular shoe off. All right, I've got the Tier Valkyrie Elite Carbon and the Tracksmith Eliot Racer. I chose to compare these two because they're both a little bit heavier than their contemporary racing shoes. They're also from brands that are really kind of breaking into the elite racing shoe market, and both doing a good job, I might say. The Valkyrie Elite Carbon has a bit more volume of cushion under the forefoot, just a higher stack in general. I think a lot of that has to do with the late stage rocker in the forefoot. I still feel a lot of cushion underneath my forefoot late in the gait cycle, whereas the Eliot Racer has a little bit more smooth, less noticeable of a rocker, but it also feels a little more natural. So the Tier, even for being a heavier shoe, has a little more pop, but the Eliot Racer has a more natural roll through the cycle. Both of these, I think, would be good training options as well as racing options for long miles, and that's generally how I use the Valkyrie Elite Carbon. But yeah, the lockdown is similar, maybe a little bit better than the Eliot Racer. All right, Saucony Endorphin Elite 2 and Tracksmith Eliot Racer. The Eliot Racer feels like one of the most stable racing shoes I've worn, and the Endorphin Elite 2 feels like one of the least stable racing shoes I've worn. I'm trying not to frame that as a positive negative, because the energy coming off the Endorphin Elite 2 is very bouncy. It's very fun. I think I discussed that in that review. I am more aware of the plate in the Endorphin Elite 2 because I feel like my body is craving the proprioception of that carbon plate in order to keep from just wobbling out of that soft, bouncy cushion. Whereas the Eliot Racer is more of a set it and forget it. It's locked down, it's stable, and it's comfortable, so I'm not even really thinking about it as I'm running. Not as energetic, but certainly fun. All right, I have the Hoka Cielo X1 2.0 and the Tracksmith Eliot Racer. So the Cielo X1 2.0 is a much more exciting shoe in this side-by-side because of that massive midfoot rocker that it has, and when I land on that, it's very energetic, very fun. The Eliot Racer feels, I don't want to say this badly, but it feels boring by comparison. However, it's a lot more stable. That's kind of the story of this shoe, is stability and comfort. Not stability in a corrective sense, but more like you know what you're going to get with every footfall. And which would you rather want at the end of a marathon or a long race? Energy and explosiveness without stability, when your legs might be going all over the place, or stability but still some good performance characteristics behind it. That's why I almost chose the Eliot Racer for the Boston Marathon. I went with the Adios Pro 4 instead because it was the devil I knew. But yeah, comfort and stability is what I'm getting, at least compared to the Hoka Cielo X1 2.0 and the Endorphin Elite 2. All right, two more shoes. All right, I have the Nike Alphafly 3 and the Tracksmith Eliot Racer. So I'm experimenting with my foot strike on this comparison here. If I make an effort to land in the rear foot, graze the heel or proximal midfoot so that I'm rolling through the whole foot, the Alphafly 3 has a more forgiving response due to that soft Zoom X foam throughout the length of the shoe. However, if I'm running more in my natural foot strike, closer to the forefoot or distal midfoot, then the Alphafly 3 feels plasticky and mechanic because of those air pods. It's not a bad thing. I think the faster you run, the more the Alphafly 3 will favor you rather than the Eliot Racer. But at those moderate paces, or fast moderate, the Eliot Racer feels a little bit more organic. It has that same smoothness no matter where I strike. I've found that in these shoe off videos, organic is often a term I use to describe a shoe that is not the Alphafly. But again, I'm trying to say that without a tinge of positivity or negativity. I just think running in these different shoes requires different styles, different thought processes, and different awareness. All right, on Cloudboom Strike, Tracksmith Eliot Racer. I think when you're talking about two boutique racing shoes with drop-in midsoles, this is the obvious comparison. They're both similarly priced as well at $280 US. So the Cloudboom Strike has a little more midsole under the forefoot. There's a higher stack there. There's about 34.5, 35 millimeters under the forefoot. So there's a little bit more bounce, or at least give, under the forefoot. The Tracksmith Eliot Racer undoubtedly has the better upper. More secure, less fuss, more comfortable. Both of them feel like they'd be very comfortable to run in at marathon pace or slower, and maybe up to half marathon pace. We'll tell during this race today what kind of paces feel good with the Tracksmith Eliot Racer. I think a worthy experiment that might be worth a whole nother video is taking the drop-in midsoles from the Cloudboom Strike and the Eliot Racer and switching them out with one another and seeing how that affects the ride of each shoe. We'll see. I don't know. Let's see how today's race goes. Okay, now that the shoe off is done, let's talk about this race that I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be doing the Pirate 15K. There's a 5K, 10K, 15K, also a 1 mile, also a half marathon. And the 5K, 10K, 15K are all doing the same course. It's an out and back course that's 5K. So 2.5K out, 2.5K back. I will be doing it 3 times because it's 15K. That makes it easy to plan. I'm gonna treat this race as a workout because I did the Boston Marathon 5 days ago, so I'm not going for an all-out 15K PR. It's not the best course for that anyway. I plan to do the first 7.5 kilometers at kind of a marathon effort. Who knows what pace that will work out to today. It's a little bit humid. And then I'm gonna do the following 5,000 meters, 5K, at kind of a half marathon effort, maybe getting down to an LT, a threshold pace, which would be like a 15K or 10-mile pace. And if I'm feeling good, I'll do the last 2,500 meters at something faster than that, 10K pace maybe, and to try and get these Eliot racers rolling through the different paces and see how they perform. Speaking of the Eliot racers, because of this gold stripe here, I picked my race kit so that I would have some gold accentuations in there. This is my matching Reckless Running singlet and shorts back from my days as a brand ambassador for them. I'm wearing the gold iridescent Gooder Bolt G sunglasses too. So we'll see what happens 5 days after the Boston Marathon, but at least I'm gonna look the part, right? See you on the course. Oh, come on.
Oh, don't do that to us.
1 more second. Sorry.
So are there 3 cones?
They're counting this one is 1. This is 1.
This is
okay.
1. So
you're going to the 4th.
Okay.
Okay.
This is 0.
This is cone number 1, and you're going to number 4. And go.
You're good.
Marathon pace is feeling a little harder than it should today. All right, it's good to know this underpass here, Mallard Creek Road, is about 1 mile from the start to finish. It's a good landmark for doing this course 3 times. It's a nice unpaved surface for this course too, in the middle of each out and back. Here's the turnaround I'll hit 3 times. 9:45, a little fast. I should be there in about 10 minutes. Come on, almost done. This is the first of 3 times I gotta climb this friggin' hill to the end. 5K down, 10K left to go. Definitely not gonna do any of that negative splitting bullshit I was talking about earlier. So initially, when I was talking about marathon pace, I was talking about PR marathon pace, which would be about 20 minutes per 5K. I suffered to do that first 5K in 20 minutes, partially because of that quarter-mile hill straight up at the end. So I'm gonna walk that back, just do kind of marathon effort, which will probably be similar to a 3-hour marathon pace. See what happens. I'm gonna coast for the rest of this race and just try and keep up that effort. Good job, runners.
Good job, nice job.
Good job, runners. Halfway. On pace for a 61 or 62 minute finish. Gonna live with that today. Good job, ladies.
Thank you. It can be much.
10K down, 5K left. It might be the slowest. It has started raining, which might be kind of a blessing. Still pretty humid out, but I get to test the wet grip of these shoes. So far, so good. Good job, ladies. Just hit the last turnaround, 2,500 meters to go. Just under 51 minutes at the turnaround. So 61 mid is my goal, is my projection. One mile to go, thereabouts. It's gonna suck because it's mostly uphill. Thank you. Ooh, that hill is awful.
Yes, it is.
Well, 61:28, far from my fastest 15K, probably maybe not even in my top 10 fastest 15Ks. If my PR 15K self were here racing against me, he would have beat me by over a mile. Anyway, I went through all of the 5K splits before all of the 5K and 10K racers, so there's that. Not a whole lot of competition for this race, but I was able to get a decent workout in. Could not do any of that negative splitting that I had planned to do. Just the marathon legs were catching up on me. I do not recommend entering a 15K race 5 days after running a marathon, especially when that marathon is 2 days after a PR 5K. But it's done. I guess had fun. It's pretty warm and humid. The rain came out for a little while. All it really served to do was spot up my glasses and make it more humid. All right, let's get into the shoe talk. All right, shoe talk time. Now that I've gone for a few runs in this shoe, the Tracksmith Eliot Racer, including a race, I think I know enough that I can give a good review of it. I apologize for all the schmutz that is still on it because I literally just came off the race course, and part of that race course had some unpaved surfaces too, which I think was good. There was some unpaved surfaces on the run I did in Salem, Massachusetts with this shoe as well, and it felt really good on those paces, really stable. Like I have said before in this video, comfort and stability are the key words when it comes to this shoe. It may not be the most propulsive and the most energetic off the toe as a lot of the other super shoes that I've tested and a lot of the other super shoes on the market, but it can still go fast and it feels good late in a hard effort. So I did a 15K today. Like I said, it was 5 days after doing a marathon, so it really almost felt like the middle or last 15K of a marathon. The legs were tired kind of going into this race, so it felt like the end of a long effort. The shoe was very comfortable and it held up, and while it didn't have a lot of pop and zip like something like the Metaspeed series shoes or a lot of aggressive roll like the Hoka Cielo X1 2.0, it did have a lot of comfort and it felt the same at the end of the race as it did at the beginning of the race. It was reliable. I could take this shoe for a long run with pace. I could take it for a long race that was maybe not an A race, or just one where I really wanted the stability. It was warm today. It felt like it breathed okay. I didn't really feel like my foot was overheating. I usually don't have problems with that. But with this faux suede upper and with the way the shoe fits closely to the foot, if you're one who is sensitive to having your feet overheat in a shoe in really hot weather, it's only late spring here, it's not summer, that might be something to consider, especially because this stripe isn't going to breathe at all. It may not be the best shoe for the hottest weather racing. I guess we'll find out over the summer. The wet grip was pretty good. It was above average. Some of those greenway surfaces, as it really started raining and all of the schmutz on the surface started loosening up, it gets a little bit greasy, but I didn't really feel like I was slipping around. I think it had pretty good purchase. I feel like this outsole will last a while too. So while this shoe is expensive, I think it's going to have a pretty good value, especially if this drop-in midsole is replaceable, like I heard the guy at the Tracksmith store saying. So I think value-wise, even though it seems really expensive for what it is, it might actually be a good deal. My long story short is this is not an A race shoe for me, but it's something that I'll get a lot of training use out of, a lot of workouts out of, and I might still do some races in it, you know, just for fun. I do like the look of it. I think if you're a Tracksmith fan, it's a must buy, but I don't think it's going to be a must buy for everyone. I think as far as performance, the Cloudboom Strike kind of fits the same role and maybe performs well, better in a race setting. But for an A race, like a half marathon or a half marathon or a 15K like today, if I really wanted to go for my fastest time, I might choose something more like the Adios Pro 4 or the Metaspeed series shoes or the original Endorphin Elite. But yeah, that is my shoe talk, and that concludes my review of the Tracksmith Eliot Racer. I appreciate you watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, ding the bell for notifications, and I'll see you on the next run.